welcome to the very first episode of the Mostly Nothing podcast. I'm your host, Noel, and today I'll be diving into a surprisingly interesting sportswear brand and one of their products that I recently tried out. But before we get into that, let me introduce what this podcast is all about. Like the name says, it's mostly nothing. It's just me sharing my thoughts on whatever caught my attention this week. It could be about sports, sneakers, tech, society, photography, or anything else that runs through my daily life. No specific niches, it's just my experiences and opinions in general. Just a little disclaimer though, I wrote and read off of a script just to avoid rambling or struggling to put my thoughts into words. I'm not apologizing, I'm just giving you guys a heads up just in case it sounds a bit too ready at times. Alright, without further ado, let's get this inaugural episode of Mostly Nothing on the road. So, I've been on the hunt for a good everyday shoe, something for walking, running, and working out. Most of the shoes that I've tried and bought were either uncomfortable or they met every criteria except for the color. So, on this ongoing quest, I stumbled upon a brand I've never heard of, Quaser. Not as well known as the big names, but surprisingly, it has a bit of an interesting backstory. So, let's talk about Quaser, spelled Quaser. Sometimes it's also spelled Quasar, so I'm quite confused about that. Anyway, I'm gonna talk about the brand, one of their trekking shoes called the Dominate, and why the shoes kind of surprised me even after I initially thought they were bad. So first things first, a quick history lesson. Based on my brief research, thanks to Google and ChatGPT, Quaser was founded in 1989 under a Swiss company. They focus mainly on football gear, so football boots, maybe even socks. They even had some jerseys. But this is just speculation on my part. It seems like they produce mainly budget-friendly equipment, so quality might not have been great even back then. That doesn't seem too different today. Most of this is based on old Facebook comments and the quality of their current stuff, so take my word with a grain of salt. I couldn't find much on their origins, but there are a few old pictures of boots and even team kits for Charlton Athletic from 1994 until 1998. And apparently they were endorsed by a few pros like Gary Lineker and Matt Letizia. And just one fun fact, in the Design Museum podcast, Gary actually talked about how the soles of his Quaser boots literally fell off right after he scored his fourth goal in a game. Definitely check out that episode of the Design Museum podcast. It's a really interesting listen, if I do say so myself. Anyway, eventually the brand faded out of the spotlight until it re-emerged years later. But for people like me who never knew about it, it felt like just appeared out of nowhere. From what I can tell, it's now owned by a Malaysian company, which explains why I've been seeing a lot of Quaser products in local mom and pop sports stores, usually at lower prices too. And that's how I found the Quaser Dominate, a trekking shoe with a very funky design. As a basketball fan, they reminded me of Kyrie's because of the rounded outsole. And speaking of the outsole, let's talk about the traction. It's very aggressive, as it should be for any trekking shoe. Whether I'm hiking or just walking around town, they do the job and grip really well. One really obvious design element is the outsole wrapping over the shoes, forming sort of a toe cup. Looks really weird, but kinda makes sense functionally. Although comfort-wise, not so much. More on that in a bit. On a side note, make sure to subscribe to the Mostly Nothing YouTube channel, where I'll be including pictures of anything that I'm talking about in the video itself. Anyhow, let's get back into talking about the Quaser Dominates. Anyhow, let's talk about the midsole, which performs surprisingly well. I couldn't find any technical info, but it feels similar to Adidas Bounce Foam. Not too soft and not too firm either. They provide slight bounce to my steps. They're not made for jumping, but if you compare it to basketball shoes, I'm gonna say that they do have good impact protection. Another positive note is the support from the wide outsole. Despite the rounded shape looking counterintuitive, I was confident because of my past experience with Kyrie's, and I was thankfully right. The wide base gives a very stable, smooth ride even on uneven ground. Honestly, the outsole and midsole really carry this shoe, literally. So, starting off the downsides, the upper is where the problem starts. It's made of a plastic material with mesh and some cushioning at the heel. I kinda get the idea, trying to make it as water resistant as possible on a really low budget. It's light, flexible, and somewhat supportive too, but I'm not sure how well it'll break in. Plus, the weight distribution is a bit off. The upper is light, but the sole, that means the midsole and the outsole, is really heavy, creating sort of an imbalance if I do say so myself. Thankfully though, it's not too noticeably bottom heavy. That toe cup that I mentioned earlier, well, that makes the front super stiff, or the toe box super stiff. And if you go sockless, the sharp and pointy design will definitely dig into your toes, and painfully too. The biggest issue here is the fake boa lacing system. It only tightens the top laces, so I had to manually pull the bottom laces and feed them into the dial, which kinda defeats the whole point of a boa lacing system. Even after adjusting, the fit still wasn't great too. The wide base creates extra space in the toe box, so my feet were sliding around, literally swimming in the toe box and jamming my toes into that stiff toe cup or toe guard. The heel counter also gave me blisters no matter how I laced it. But here's the twist. Weirdly, during a hike, none of those issues happened. No toe jams, no heel pain, nothing, nada. It felt like the perfect hiking shoe. Maybe it was the socks, or maybe I finally adjusted the laces just right. Either way, it kinda worked. This goes to show some shoes aren't meant to do everything. These should stay strictly in the hiking lane, in my personal opinion. Anyway, if you're looking for a budget-friendly hiking shoe or trekking shoe with a solid performance, I'd say the Quaser Dominate is worth at least checking out. But if you want something for casual everyday wear, don't even think about it if you really love your feet. And I guess that's it for this first episode of Mostly Nothing. I hope you guys enjoyed this little deep dive into an obscure brand with a weirdly fascinating backstory and one of its quirkiest products. I'll be posting weekly on Spotify and, as I mentioned, YouTube as well, so subscribe if you want to hear a new perspective every week. This has been Noel, your host for Mostly Nothing. See ya.